right, Lindsay, I'm so excited to speak with you today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, we obviously know each other, um, but I was excited to speak with you today because I feel like, you have had a huge amount of successes with your endurance racing. And it's something that, at least I get the sentiment, you don't really like talking about your successes too much.
How did you know?
I mean, I don't hear about them very often.
It's true.
So,
I mean, this is definitely a bit outside my comfort zone, but no, I think it's good to share more about the story behind it, right? And more about the journey I've been on, in endurance racing in the past 5+ years, but also as it relates to my life and my life here in Asia. So I am happy to talk with you about it today.
And so you're probably one of the most humble people I know, as I say. You don't really like talking about your successes. You're quite personal about that to some extent.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Is there a specific reason why you feel like you don't want to share it that much or you don't like talking about it too much?
I mean, I think it comes back to how you're conditioned as a child, right? Especially through sports as a child. And growing up, I played very competitive sports, mostly basketball. Played a lot of different team sports, but went to a high school to play for a certain coach and a team, and it was really intense, and just this mentality that you can always be better, right? You can always improve. You can always be at that next level. Same in college. I played in college at a high level, Division 1, and you don't really toot your own horn, right? Especially when you're on a team. And I think that's the team part of it is very fundamental to who I am and to how that contributes to not talking so much about personal successes in a very solo sport, right?
True. So that makes sense. So you had this kind of big team sport background, and then now obviously it's a solo sport.
Exactly.
Now that you say it, it makes sense because I feel like you contribute a lot of your successes to those surround you. So you do kind of take a team approach, right, to what it
Totally.
is that you're doing. In what way is it different in the sense that I feel like it's a different type of personality almost that's needed
Absolutely.
for those two things? So which one suits you best as a person? How do you reconcile?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think team sports are wonderful when you're a child, right? The soft skills, the teamwork, the collaboration, how you communicate with teammates and a coach is so important in those teenage years. Even through college. Endurance sport, triathlon specifically, is such a like experience with yourself and your mind, right? And that's where I had to learn so much in the last few years is how to be with yourself, right? Especially when things get really hard and you're racing and you go into these depths that I never experienced in team sport. And so that kind of, yeah, that relationship with your brain and how you talk to yourself and that a really ability to boost yourself up. No one else is there going to be there to help you through kind of those dark times, right? So I think as I get older, I appreciate that more. I appreciate that time with myself and how I evolve as a human being, right, through endurance sport.
So it was just kind of natural transition that you thought was somewhat necessary to go from this team setting to then going to you doing your thing, pursuing your own goals and pursuing your own, yeah.
I mean, it happened naturally, and I can give you the quick overview. So I was in my senior year at Brown, and in about halfway through the season, I tore my ACL. So just in an instant, my season and my career was over. And along with that, really my identity as a college basketball player, until I was 22, I identified very strongly with that. And that was taken from me and not on my own terms, right? And so I went through this rehab process, and then I was living in Washington, D.C., and I sought out community through sport, and triathlon just kind of, I'd always been interested in it. I actually did a race, my first race in university, in between my freshman and sophomore year. It's actually an incredible story. My best high school teammate's mother had been diagnosed with ALS, and so we spent the summer training for our first triathlon. It was a very short one. I think it was a sprint or an Olympic distance. And we spent all summer training for this. I was really burned out of basketball after that freshman year. And so it gave me this, life again, right? And passion. And we raised a lot of money for this foundation that contributes to ALS research. And it was just a very formative summer and it was sort of this moment where I was like, I love this, Okay, but I went back to basketball. I had to play another 3 years of really high level basketball. And then with the injury and finding community through triathlon in DC, it was very meaningful. I think my first half Ironman, I did one like spur of the moment. I think it was close to 6 hours, and I had a great time. It was very chill, and I trained maybe for 6 weeks. It was then that I went traveling, and I didn't really do much other than just run around. But I looked back on that, especially that summer in college, and kind of the people I had met in Washington, D.C. through the sport, that I knew this, this would be a part of my life again. I just didn't know when.
Okay. And so we spoke about, being humble, having those successes, not necessarily wanting to show them because, as you said, coming from a team setting where, first of all, you're in a team, it's not about you. Second of all, as you say, you can always be better, right? So if you're in a highly competitive environment, I can imagine it's almost like, yeah, sure, you're good, but also in a highly competitive environment, there's lots of people who are even better.
Totally.
Right? So it's like, it does humble you to a certain extent.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, I mean, are you proud of the journey you've taken? It's not something you necessarily talk about a lot. So, I mean, do you feel that pride, even if you try to not kind of flaunt it?
Oh my gosh, I really do. Especially after this last race in February, I raced at half Ironman Thailand, and it was my first half Ironman win. It was, a huge PB in really hot, sweltering environment, and I've spent the last 3 weeks reflecting on that journey, and it's cool. I first went there 5 years ago to the same exact race, just as a spectator. I had started running on the track with some guys from Iron Guides Method. It's what the club is called here in Bangkok. And, at the time I was just running, so I went down to support them. And I think it was like one of the hottest days on February record or something. I mean, it was absolute carnage on the course, but I was like, I want to do this next year. I need to be here. And I was obviously just amazed at what everyone was putting themselves through to see what they were made of on that day. And so a few months later, I brought my road bike back from California, and I competed in my first half Ironman in Asia that August. So that's 4.5 years ago. And so to come back in February and, the finish line is wonderful, right? It's fun to come first and to break the tape, but to really think back on what that finish line meant, it was a culmination of 5 years of I would call it a bumpy road, a very bumpy road, right? I came back after watching them a year later in 2020 to race in that race, and I came third. And then a week later, the country was shut down for 2 years for COVID. And, there was very little racing. It was all about training and finding a way to enjoy it, right? So we'd go out every Sunday. We would go out like 180 kilometers into the Bangkok countryside, or we'd run along the Klong, right? And I didn't realize it then, but I see so clearly now that it was just stacking a lot of bricks, For 4 years, I've been stacking these bricks. And I'm most proud of that, that I found so much enjoyment in that process, that I found incredible people. I mean, absolute, just incredible human beings, right? And I am most proud of that journey, I've fallen off my bike quite a few times. I've been to the hospital with, heat stroke. Had some really, some tough lows, but that just makes it all sweeter, right?
And so, I mean, I love that because I feel like it's so glorified. Like you see, you even see videos or whatever, and people are like breaking tape, winning their races, and it comes with this sense of like, wow, glory, that's amazing. But that's like the smallest fraction of it, right? The reality is that grind, that daily training, that probably does get repetitive and maybe boring.
Oh my gosh.
And you kind of have to learn how to fall in love with the mundane, right?
Exactly. And in Asia, we have to train a lot inside, right?
Yeah.
Especially on the bike. So if I could just show you the setup, I mean, it is the least sexy setup, right? It's your bicycle, that's the back wheel is locked, and I have, we all have power in our bikes in different ways, but I have the power hooked up to a computer screen, or I'm even my phone. So I'm just looking at this program. There's not even, the one I use doesn't even have graphics. It's just, it's just like it's just telling me what interval to do next. And it's totally unsexy, but I love to train. I've always loved to train ever since I was, in high school, and I love to.
What do you love about it?
Yeah, I just love.
The picture you're painting doesn't sound.
I know. I just love just that grind, that like day in and day out. I know that I'm putting in the work.
Yeah.
I know that I'm following a process. I know that good things happen when you're stacking these bricks, right? And I get a lot of satisfaction out of that.
Do you get satisfaction out of, like, suffering to some extent?
Yes. And yes, I do. I've asked my father this. Why do I like this? And he says, you need to talk to your therapist about it.
You need to talk to somebody. Yeah, I mean, like, to some extent, I mean, as human beings, we seek comfort, right? But I do also think that we seek suffering to a certain extent because we also associate it with, on the other side of suffering, lie the good things.
Yeah.
Which can be helpful, but I think there's a danger zone with being too attached to that suffering. And I saw that, when I had coaching clients, and I would see that I felt like they were purposely making their life harder than it needed to be to get the satisfaction of the suffering. But the suffering is only beneficial if it's helping you get somewhere, right? You can bang your head against a wall repeatedly. Sure, you'll suffer, but it's not really helping you with anything.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a really fine line. It's actually quite hard to know, I feel good because as you say, I'm putting in the grind, I'm working hard, and it's hard, and the more I suffer, the better. But also, it's not linear, right? It's not like the more you suffer, the better.
No,
it's not like
not at all.
a fail-proof strategy.
Not at all. And, like I said, I'm 5 years into this endurance journey, and what I've learned, especially in the last year and a half, is that I am happiest and I'm at my most balance when I'm keeping like just an overall, pretty relatively above average level of fitness. And then when I need to prepare for a race, like I did for Thailand, I can put my head down for 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, and I can work hard. And I see that, I see the direct correlation. For 3.5 weeks, I put my head down, I do what my coach tells me to do, and I see big progress. So, I don't think it's healthy nor sustainable to grind all the time, right? Like we're talking about. That's why you see people burn out. You need other stuff in your life, right? You need to go out, you need to have, if you drink, you need to have a drink or two if that's what you like, or see friends and invest in relationships and still maintain. It's very important to me that I maintain my work at a very high level, my career. It's all about finding balance, and I don't think anyone has the perfect answer, so it's, you're always kind of trying and seeing how it changes in relation to your season of life.
So I feel like balance, you can see it in two different ways. It's either like you find this perfect balance where at every moment in your life you're balanced, or it's like you find balance in the unbalances and you focus too much, quote unquote, on one thing and then maybe too little on it, and it balances out over time. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I believe in, sprints or seasons of life, whatever you call it, there will be times, if you dream of doing an Ironman, like I did a couple years ago, I dreamt of this big race, right? I had to go into a season of life where I had to sacrifice other things, right? I couldn't, I couldn't be staying up until midnight. Had to really prioritize the training if I wanted to accomplish this goal. So season of life, or putting your head down, whatever you want to call it, I think that's for me, it's a very healthy way to operate.
I feel like it's a more approachable way as well. I feel like this idea of balance is like, well, what does it mean on a day-to-day basis to have that perfect balance? And I think, as you said, it's actually more about what phase am I in?
Absolutely.
What is my priority in this exact phase? And so how can I make that my priority then? And that means I do less of something else.
Absolutely.
You know? I'd always heard a quote that was like, the only way to do everything is to, oh no, I'm going to butcher this. I don't know if I remember it. But it's like, how do you do everything? You don't do it all at once.
Yeah.
Like you can do everything, but you can't do it all at once. So it's, instead of how do I do it all, it's like, what are the 3 things in my life I'm fully focusing on right now, and how can I let go of the rest? And then there's a season for everything, right? Then you switch those things.
Absolutely.
So that's the approach that you take to training.
Yes.
Do you feel like it helps having a coach? Because back to what we were saying about how do you balance this quote unquote liking to suffer thing? If you have a coach that's telling you, this is your training, this is what you need to be doing, and make sure that you have 2 days a week of resting, or you have like 1 rest day a week or whatever it is, then you can kind of be okay with it. Whereas if you're on your own, it's like, oh, well, it's never enough, right?
That's exactly how I would explain it. I believe so strongly in the power of coaching. All my life, I've had amazing coaches to teach me not only about the sport, but also how it applies to life. And the same is true with triathlon. Like the first 2.5 years, I would just, tack on to other people and do their workouts. And, it was very loose, and that's because I didn't know what I wanted out of the sport. My relationship with triathlon was much different then. But then when I decided to hire a coach, I would say not only have I improved far more than I would have alone, but that mental burden of what am I doing today? Am I doing enough? Was just released, right? There's someone external who has the big picture in mind, and they also tell you the tactical, right? Wake up, look at my plan, okay, go execute. Yeah. And then move on with my day, all right? I have to go to work, I have to have, relationships in my life, and someone else is kind of has that goal in mind for you and can design the plan. So I am 100% behind coaching. It's such a great investment, and it's very positively impacted me as an athlete as well.
So that's interesting, right? Because you kind of like externalize the have I done enough question, right, to somebody else who knows.
Yes.
I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're the kind of person who's always like, yes, like grind it out, if you apply that to sport, you probably apply that to other places in your life as well.
Absolutely. In terms of coaching, you mean? Or
no, just in terms of like if you have that personality of grind it out.
Absolutely.
Have I done enough because I always want to do more? If you're applying that to sport, I'm assuming that's real in your work life. It's real in other parts of your life as well, right?
I mean, a direct application to my parallel life and building a company in Thailand, across Southeast Asia. I think, the correlation is so direct, right? But there's the grind aspect of it. There is the resiliency aspect of it, which that's probably the biggest takeaway, is that endurance sport has made me resilient. I think, time and time again, I have put myself out there and failed, and I've had to, really build resiliency, right? And that is directly applied to work as well. Like startup life is quite tumultuous, especially at the beginning, and I've had to find creative ways to keep the company going, right? To be successful. And I say that triathlon is my practice field for life, and it's cheesy and corny, but I couldn't believe it more. Like, this is where I get to test out all these things, right? And show myself, before work in the morning that, okay, it's just really unsexy to sit on the trainer for an hour and ride your bike, but I just did that, and now I'm going to go do the hard things at work, you know?
So, but I guess the difference is that in a triathlon setting, you can externalize the have I done enough question through a coach.
That's correct, yeah.
And you can't necessarily do that in other parts of life, right?
Yeah. You learn from your coach, though, right? And you, I think you mature in a way where you know when you have done enough, right? You know, whether it be the numbers of your business, if they're showing positively, like you know, and I see what you mean, but I think it's always a work in progress as well.
Yeah. So I guess it comes as well with this idea of like knowing your limits to a certain extent. Yeah. So I feel like when you get so in the habit of pushing your limits, and you have to push your limits on a day-to-day basis, right?
Sure.
I mean, you're going to improve by doing those small pushes, but
Yeah.
I feel like once again, there's a threshold of you need to push it enough to improve. You don't need to push it so much that it actually makes you take a step back.
Exactly.
How do you know that? Like, I mean, do you know that, or like, how can we know that? How do we even learn that? I mean,
Yeah.
even for anyone who's listening who probably doesn't do Ironmans and doesn't do
Yeah.
ultra, endurance sports, it's still a relevant question in everyday life, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I've thought a lot about as well because naturally I like to push the limits. I love to be on this edge of comfort and to know what's going to happen if I go over the comfort zone, right? And I have crossed it, especially in the first few years of learning about this sport, which I was actually brand new to, While I have like a strong foundational background as an athlete, like I had to learn, so much about swimming and riding your bike and running. And early on I did cross the limits. I had some, for example, in 2020, I was really excited about this Laguna Phuket triathlon. It was my first time, and hot day, but nothing crazy, right? And I was chasing the girl in first, and I last remember looking at my watch at 7 kilometers. That is the last thing. I knew I wasn't feeling well, but when I woke up, I was in the back of an ambulance with all these IVs hooked up onto me. Some of my teammates were looking down on me, had no idea where I was. And I had just, passed out from heat stroke. And looking back, I'm sure there were a lot of variables that went into that accident, but I pushed the limit on the bike, right? I went over the limit, I overbiked. And while it was very unfortunate for everyone involved, I learned so much from that, right? And I was a different athlete after that. Similarly in 2022, I fell off my bike and broke my collarbone in a training accident 11 weeks before Ironman Austria. And also very unfortunate because I was really excited about this Ironman experience, and as a result, I had to go inside for 10 weeks and, do my 5-hour trainer rides inside on the, basically on the computer. And it wasn't pretty, but I'd gone over the limit, right? So I had to kind of pivot and come up with another way to get it done. So, the point being, I think it's always going to be a work in progress. I think my limit now is also different than it was 3 years ago. So I'm still curious about what that edge is. But, I think you're always learning, and you take in the experience and you do the best with what you have on that day.
So do you have to learn your limits by crossing them?
I think...
I'm actually curious. I don't know.
Yeah. Ideally, you don't cross them, right?
Yeah.
But I think you feel as if you're quite close.
Yeah.
But not, when you're training, there's only a couple workouts when you're going to dig really deep, right? For example, we go to the track on Wednesdays with a coach and the team, and every Wednesday, that you're going to suffer so much during that session. And, even when Coach Vinny says, like, okay, don't mess up the first few reps, because if you do, you're basically done for the rest of the session, right? You need to keep your ego in check, and you really need to execute based on your current fitness, right? If you cross the limit early on in that set, your workout is basically done. You're toast. So there are smaller opportunities to test those limits, right? It's not always about the race day. Even when you're riding bike inside, you can test your limit just by a few extra hard intervals. Okay, I'm not there yet, so I need to dial it back. So yeah, it's like a constant data collection and making decisions and adapting based on the information that you have.
Yeah. I guess it's the same in everyday life, right? Like, you're constantly testing your limits of, wait a second, how much can I be doing in order for it to still be productive without it forcing me to then take that step back? So you mentioned that, so with the training, to some extent you enjoy that, right? Like, you enjoy the discipline of the training, the challenge of the training.
Yeah.
Do you prefer the training or the race?
I mean, it's so different, right? The training is that day to day, okay, like, I'm building character. I know that I'll get to execute on this in the future. I don't think anything makes me feel so alive than actually standing on the start line of a race. I love the start line of a race. First of all, especially in the past couple of years, okay, I give gratitude for being here, healthy. I made it here. There's so many things that can go wrong in a training block, right? Especially for these longer distance races where you're not racing that frequently. And just giving gratitude that I'm here, I'm healthy, and today I get to see what I'm made of on this day. I started to do this thing in like the longer triathlons where I'll swim out, like if we can warm up, and I just like look back. I just swim out, look back, and take a moment and be like, wow, everyone here also sacrificed so much and went on this journey, and they're also standing at this start line.
It's like, we don't have to be here. Like, no one has to be doing this. I mean, unless you're doing it, like, competitively and it's your job. But otherwise, like, everyone's just taking that time out of their day.
They're taking their time, and because they want to see, everyone has a different why, right? But it gives me, it's like a really special moment for me at each race to kind of see everyone, coming to the start line together. But yeah, racing, it makes me feel alive. Like the different emotions you experience, let's say in an Ironman, so like somewhere around 5 hours. The range of emotions you experience is like, it's just incredible. There's nothing else that I do in my life where I get that same range. And we can go into that more, but you can go from just being so nervous and excited. Okay, then you're in it. You're in the start of the race. You're at some point going to experience probably like deep pain and suffering, right? And then that pain ends, and you cross the finish line, and that pain ends, and
you forget about it.
And they always say like wait 24 hours to sign up for your next race because you're just on such a high. Yeah, it's very special.
So when you're at the lowest point of that race, is there like something that you repeat in your head, or like what are you even thinking?
Yeah. So lots of things. I think, so if we look at the whole race, like, first of all, I've tried to, and these are all tools, like skills I've honed over the past couple of years. So looking at it as a long day, like there are going to be things that go wrong, right? And it's all about how you react and manage them. So for Ironman Thailand, actually, my best training partner, Victor, he sent me this little podcast about a week before the race of, it was about being a Pac-Man. So I had a Pac-Man written on my wrist. And the idea was that for this particular race, I was going to come out of the water probably quite far behind some of the top girls. And I needed to be a Pac-Man for the rest of the day. So I needed to race my race and just start eating people, right? Slowly, one by one. The race was going to be long, like, ideally I would catch everyone by the end. So, that was one mantra I've had. There have been other mantras that
you repeat, like, I'm a Pac-Man? Or you just, like, think about it and you kind of imagine it? I guess it's like gamifying it, right? Yeah. It's like making the whole thing feel a little bit more light.
It was just an image in my head and a visual on my wrist that, like, that was the strategy for that day, There have been other ones, I always go back to, like, be here now, be present now, or, like, you're just tough as nails. Like, I repeat that to myself often, but throughout the race, especially on the run, I'm focused on one aid station at a time. So, like, a half Ironman and a full Ironman especially, it's all about the next aid station, which is usually 2 kilometers away. So I'm running hard till the next aid station, and then I'm going to slow down, shuffle my feet, put as much drink and whatever I need at the aid station, make sure it goes into my body, cool down with the ice or whatever, and then continue running. So I break that long run down into very small bites. I can draw a lot of inspiration depending on who's there, like draw inspiration on whether my family's there or friends. I often have to look back on past experiences when I've really suffered as well and know that, like, I'm stronger because of those, and nothing could be as worse as that. In particular, the marathon I did in October in Portugal. For my whole life, I will remember that nothing can be as worse as the last 20 minutes of that marathon.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It was so painful that you know, I really think that memory is seared in my in my brain, and I'll look back on that and remember, okay, nothing is as bad as that, so just take your mind elsewhere, and the pain will end.
So you mentioned earlier, right, this picture of you arriving at the triathlon, doing a little warm up in the swim, turning around, looking around at everybody who's at the start line about to get started, right? And that, I can imagine that's a feeling of like, wow, everyone's here.
It's a wow feeling.
Yeah. And this is something that, actually I was reading this book called What I Think About When I Think About Running by Murakami, and he was saying how that's something that he thinks about at the beginning of the race, is like, everybody here not only has chosen to do this on a Saturday morning, they've chosen to probably pay money to do it, and then they've chosen to go to bed early last night, they chose to train for the past however many weeks, months, whatever it was, and make this huge sacrifice for it, right? And it's like, while you're in it, you're thinking, why the hell am I doing this? Like I mean, really.
Totally.
I remember I did not at all on the same level, but I remember doing a race that I'd signed up for on a whim that I was not at all prepared to do. And it's like very uphill. It's like uphill for like 15 kilometers, and then the last 5K, like all the way down. So like both are as painful one as the other. And I remember looking at everybody, I passed my apartment and I was thinking like, I like could just go to bed right now. Like, why do this, And like, that's an actual question. It's like, it's painful. You're spending money and time doing it. Like, it's not rational. Like, why do we do this? Like, why are, and ultra endurance running is super popular. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe you think it's also gaining momentum. Sometimes if you're in that world, you probably see it even more. It's still a small fraction of the population, but still, it's still something that people do. Like, why do you think we're attracted to this?
Yeah. I mean, when you subscribe to this question of what are my limits, or no limits, then you're always going to wonder what you're made of, right? I have a deep curiosity with my potential, and I believe that everyone is sitting on untapped potential, right? And I want to explore that my whole life. I want to evolve 100 times over, and I think not just in sport, but sport is the vehicle that allows me to do that, right? I get that confidence from sport, and I can apply it to other parts of my life. I think many endurance athletes are driven by that question of what am I capable of? How long can I go in this? And you look at my first Ironman, half Ironman race in Asia in the Philippines was like 5 hours and 26 minutes or something. And I was like, I was so proud of myself at that time, right? It was really hard, and I tried really hard. And then a month ago, I went 4 hours and 39 minutes. Wow. So, my question is, well, can I go faster? Where can I make these gains, right? And you have to keep it all in check, right? Yeah. Because you can always go faster. Yeah. There's always,
and it can always be better, and there's always somebody's better than you.
Always someone better than you. Someone will always go faster. So I think those are healthy questions to ask, and then, what do I need to do to go faster, and does that fit into the larger picture of my life, right? And I think if you can keep it all in balance, then it really is. I think for me, I believe it's a healthy pursuit.
And, okay, so that's a good point, because it's a question, right? Do you think there's, like, an answer? Do you think you get there and you're like, great, found my limit,
no,
it's 4 hours,
never.
now we're done? Like,
no,
so it's a question, but it's a question with no answer.
Right.
So it's not actually about the question, right?
And again, it takes you back to this, this journey that you're on, right? If you are enjoying the journey, then continue to pursue, right? I still love the journey. I love to ride my bike with my friends. And, push hard, but then we stop for coffee. Like, that to me, I feel happy, and I feel like this is living, right? Mm-hmm. Or getting up in the morning and going running in a beautiful place. Or, I love to go on this journey and see the progress, and I'd love to do it with other people. So, I think as long as you know your why and what you're chasing, and, you feel like you're fulfilled in other ways, then the journey can go on forever.
So that's your why then. Your why is that question.
My why, right now, with triathlon is, what am I capable? What are my limits?
Do you have like a goal of like something you want to test? It's like, I wonder if I can do half Ironman in 4 hours or something.
I mean, definitely 4 hours, no, but I think I'm very curious as to how I can race not in this hot weather, because I've dabbled in Europe, and never in the U.S., but I've dabbled in Europe, and you just feel better, right? You just go faster. Like, it's just such a sweaty mess here, and the nutrition becomes much more important when you're racing in Asia. And so, yeah, I'm curious about, how fast I can go in, like, colder weather.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because it's like, once again, it's this juggling game, and one might say, like, well, what are you chasing, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of, as you say, okay, well, it's not you're chasing an answer or a finish line. You're actually enjoying the journey.
Absolutely.
But then it's hard when it's always the next chase and the next chase,
for sure.
Right?
For sure. The like big tangible project I want to work on is my swim, because it's quite disproportionate to my other two, and that like is a whole separate journey. That's going to involve me kind of forgetting how I've ever learned to swim and like starting again, because if I really want to go faster, then I need to go on this like long swim journey, which will probably take years, But I want to go on it because I actually love to swim. I love to be in the water. My brain is happiest in water and when I get out of water. So that's a journey that I want to go on. I just need the right variables, time, coach, and that's a really big, actually that's more than the heat. With it, like the swim is like a really big question for me, because I could basically start as like a beginner swimmer again.
True, which is humbling as well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when we talk about like dopamine and things like that. I mean, we talk a lot about how it's not actually achieving something, it's the chase of something, right? That makes us feel good and gives us motivation and energy and stuff. So do you feel like the corresponding, let's say like positive emotion you feel from the result is equivalent to like the big finale? Or is it like when you cross a finish line, what does that actually feel like to you?
Yeah. I mean, on a good day, when the day goes well, you feel as though the finish line like represents everything that you put into it. For example, like in Thailand, I was like, okay, this finish line, it feels really good because it's the culmination of a lot of hard work. But you can also have an amazing preparation for a race and for something to go wrong, right? Just to have a bad day or just things out of your control that make for a really painful finish line. And then I think you have to sit with that. You have to sit with those emotions. You kind of have to feel that disappointment and sadness, and then, figure out, kind of ask yourself the why again, and, figure out if you have the motivation to kind of restart and to chase something else. But that's sport, right? That's like why you play the game, is to kind of have that. You're going to have bad days, right? And those days only build resilience, and they only build like that character that makes the sweet days even better.
Are you able to always remember that in the moment?
No, of course not.
I was going to say, I mean, it sounds true.
Of course not. In the moment you're like, oh, why do I do this? And why do I sacrifice so much? And, but that does go away, that I think you are able to get that perspective once you kind of all those emotions from the immediate disappointment go away.
Yeah. So what makes it all worth it? Like everything that you do, what makes it all worth it?
I mean, it's the combination of everything, right? It's the character building that I get from it. It's being outside and communing with nature. It's the people I go on the journey with, right? Like, people say endurance sport is a lifestyle, and I couldn't agree more. Like, it is really about, there's so many pieces of the puzzle, and I enjoy most of them, I love how it helps me be a better human being. I think I am the person I am right now because of what endurance sport has given to me.
So what are the biggest lessons it's taught you that you've maybe transferred into other parts of your life?
I think I touched on like the resiliency before, a lot of bumps in the road. They have really honed in on my the resiliency in my character. I think vulnerability is one that we don't talk a lot about. I mean, you show up to a race and you say, okay, today is just a full send. I'm going to put it out. I'm going to put it all out there, and I'm going to see what happens. And that's scary because sometimes you fail, and you make you make a mess sometimes and you have to pick yourself back up. But apply that, directly to startup. You put yourself out there, you hire all these people, right? You believe in the mission, you believe in what you're building, you believe that it has impact, right? And you believe that there's a business case for it. And then sometimes it just doesn't work out. And, kind of in the middle of this triathlon journey, I was also going through some really turbulent times in the startup world. And I felt like there was direct correlation, it's like, okay, in the morning, this is my practice field. And then I'm just applying this directly to my day-to-day. And so there's so much crossover, flexibility, of course, and adaptability. But, the biggest thing is that your life is long. Your life is one big journey, and you don't know how it's going to turn out, right? What you can control is how you react, how you how you treat people. And I think, if you have that mindset of we're on this journey, it's long, and I'm going to take it bite by bite, you're going to have a happy, successful life.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting about endurance sport as compared to other kind of athletic pursuits is obviously the length of it. Yeah. And as you say, that's almost more of a direct correlation to life, because it's not about a sprint. It's not about as going fast as you can in that one moment. And I mean, Rich Roll says this a lot. He says that the prize doesn't go to the one who's the fastest, it goes to the person who slows down the least, right? And that's true in endurance.
Rich Roll would say that.
It's true in endurance racing because it is long, and just because you're in 10th place for the first half doesn't mean you can't win it. Like, there's all these things where it's actually about the slow and steady kind of wins the race, which again is cliche, but that's so true in life as well.
Slow and steady, and just doing the next best thing. If I need to swim 4,000 meters at the racket club, I don't think about the 4,000 meters I need to swim. I think about getting in the pool. Okay, we're doing the warm-up, right? Okay, what's the next thing I need to do? I need to do this set of the workout. Okay, then this set. Like, you just do the next right thing, in sport, in life. And those bricks stack, and, they'll lead, where you want them to lead.
True. And I always think when you're in a hard phase, or you have a big goal, we often talk about start with why, right? Like Simon Sinek, start with why, and we're looking at the end objective. But sometimes I think, if you're climbing a mountain, you don't look at the top, because the top is far and it's scary. It's like, look at your feet one step at a time, right? Because you sometimes can't see the end, and it feels like it's so far away.
Yeah, exactly.
And a mantra I'd heard from a runner was run the mile you're in, which I really like as well. It's like, you don't need to think about the next 10.
Absolutely.
And often that's actually where the suffering comes from, right? The pain is real, but the suffering comes from, how the hell am I going to do this for another 10K, another 20K, another whatever? Like, how the hell am I going to get through this? And that's where the actual resistance and suffering comes from.
Absolutely.
Whereas in the moment, can you take one step forward? Probably.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfectly said.
So it's always just that one
the
thing.
next best thing.
So you obviously live your life with a certain intensity, right? In terms of the training, in terms of work.
Yeah.
What are some things that you hold on to that ground you, that pull you back down, that maybe level out that intensity to a certain extent? Are there certain kind of like practices that you lean towards, or non-negotiables that help you level that out?
Yeah. I mean, we're very lucky in Asia that we can lean hard into some of the luxury, the relaxation, right? I love a Thai massage, that weekly Sunday evening Thai massage. I love cold and hot. I think I spend more time in the onsen now. The biggest thing is sleep, though. We can take all these supplements and do all these things, but when you sleep well, you train well.
Is that a non-negotiable for you, sleep?
I mean, it is. I'm not always the best, I don't always have the best habits, but I try. 7 hours of sleep is my sweet spot, 8 hours of sleep. I think another thing that's been an important learning is that your body doesn't know the difference between physical stress and stress in your life. It just knows stress. So you really have to be mindful of where all the stress in your life is coming from, whether it be for work or relationships, wherever it is. you need to keep it all in balance. You can't be going. There have been times when I've been burning that candle on multiple ends, and it leads to just absolute fatigue or burnout or getting sick, you know. So that's been a good learning, I think.
So it's kind of like looking at all the different areas of your life. And if you are in, for example, that phase where it's like, okay, training needs to take my stress quota to a certain extent.
Exactly.
So you're thinking about how you can reduce it in other areas of life.
Exactly.
And so do you take like a really practical approach to that, thinking like, okay, other areas of my life, how am I going to reduce stress in those areas in order to like channel that amount of stress into my training?
Yeah, as much as I can. I think the sleep is the most important thing, right? You can't be staying up late. If you have stresses in multiple areas, you need to be sleeping in order to fully recover. So, but yeah, taking stock of where everything is and how it all fits together is really important.
I feel like that's really, I mean, helpful and practical also for somebody who isn't in training, but maybe you have a phase of life where it's like, okay, work is the focus at the moment,
Yeah.
or I don't know, like it's a stressful time within family or whatnot. And it's like, okay, that will take up a larger
Yes.
portion of my stress quota that I can maybe
Absolutely.
handle.
Yeah.
And so then focusing on reducing it in other areas, even if it's just temporarily.
Absolutely. I think also the past couple of years really prioritizing protein has made a really big difference. I always feel much better when I'm prioritizing protein as a macro, and that's made a big difference in how I feel, how I recover, especially. Like, you know, there's no skipping meals after workouts. I rarely ever do a fasted workout. At least I'll have like, you know, half a cup of juice or something. So making sure I'm fed and always recovering after intensity, even non-intensity with some protein. It's been a game changer.
Yeah. And so does your coach help you with nutrition as well?
A bit. He's there for me when I have questions. But there's so much out there now, right? And
which can be confusing and too much.
Confusing and too much, but love what, you know, we're seeing like Stacy Sims and other researchers separate out the female versus male research. And, you know, I'm not like totally up to date, but I think I do appreciate that we are being treated as, you know, physiologically different and we have different needs. And I think there's a lot of exciting things to come kind of out of that body of work that's growing momentum.
Anything that you've learned of relatively recently? I mean, you mentioned obviously like protein being important, but I'm assuming that's not like a recent breakthrough.
Not recent, but I think, you know, you're hearing more about like no fasted workouts and none of this like no carb business for women. Men are different, right? Men can train on less carbs, but women, we need carbs, and I would really like to be more in touch with like or be more observant around my cycle. Like it's something that I really don't give enough attention to.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you feel a huge difference?
No.
In your training?
No,
you don't at all?
Not at all.
Oh my goodness,
No.
I'm a totally different person.
Yeah. I've never, so it's, but I think there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out around that, so.
I mean, when you're talking about the phases, then it's like, okay, you have certain weeks where you do actually even maybe have a higher intensity workout than you usually would, and then other weeks where you kind of taper it down.
Yeah, I've never adapted.
Then it's like cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles, right?
I've never adapted a workout to my cycle.
Wow.
I know, which I'm sure many women would be like, you're crazy. Yeah. That's the truth.
Yeah. I mean, some people feel it more than others, but.
No.
Okay, anything else that sticks to you or that you want to learn more about or that you think might, I don't know, elevate your upcoming performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more and more research to show why weight training is so important for women endurance athletes, and I think I'm a bit unique in that I've come from such a foundational strength background, like basketball. Until I was 22, we lifted a lot of weights, and I think that has positively impacted how much load I can take on the endurance side because, you know, I've had acute injuries, but knock on wood, I haven't had too many chronic injuries, and I do credit that to how much strength training I had to do in my early 20s, and which I still do, actually.
Yeah. So what were some of the kind of big lessons that you learned or some of the best advice you've received when it comes to endurance training in general?
The best advice, the training advice, you mean? Yeah, I mean, so much, right? But what it comes down to, I think, is especially in the amateur level, you have to enjoy it. You have to have fun. It is a lifestyle. Of course, there's going to be the bad that comes with it, but you have to enjoy what you're doing. And you need to be patient. You need to know that that progress takes time. But when you put in the work and you stack these bricks bit by bit, good things are going to come.
Yeah. I think that's a really important bit, because you can easily grow resentful towards something, and that's just not going to help you. And the more resistance you feel, the harder it will be to move forward and even, stack those bricks over time. And
yeah, we're playing the long game here, especially when you're new to the sport, right? Like, I was new to all three disciplines, really, and I didn't always realize that at the beginning. I was very I want results. I want to see progress, and but I look back over the 5 years, and there's not much I would change, to be honest. Like, even the bad, I got so many learnings from that, and the person I am now is a result of those highs and lows,
True, and they always say that you overestimate how much you can do in 1 year and underestimate how much you can do in 10,
Absolutely.
Right? So I'm sure you look back over 5 years, and maybe in those 5 years it felt like, maybe I haven't made enough progress quickly enough or whatnot, and then you look back and realize, geez, I've come so far.
Absolutely.
So what's next for you? What are you training for?
Yeah, so we're in a bit of a downtime now. I'm really excited because I'm planning this trip to Taiwan in over Thai New Year, and I'm going to ride my bicycle around the perimeter of Taiwan, the Huandao. It's called the Huandao Road.
So that's your downtime.
That's my downtime. So I'm just riding my bike a lot for that. But it's like a bit of a solo bike packing trip. I've never bike packed that long or alone.
You feel like you need to do that by yourself?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I would love for friends to join, but it's a bit of a Thai New Year, people are going all over the place, right? But yeah, I think it will be I hope to meet people. It'll be a nice journey to go on, and I'm also keeping it quite flexible because I don't know what's going to happen, and maybe I want to take the train one day and skip ahead, right? So trying to keep it all kind of in perspective,
Right,
but
yeah.
Dreaming of Taiwan for quite a while now, so. And then after that, I will not much planned until the end of the year. In December, we have the half Ironman World Championships in Taupo, New Zealand.
Wow.
And this is actually a race I qualified for in 2019 before the pandemic, and because of COVID and New Zealand's restrictions, they've had to postpone the race for 5 years.
Wow.
So I will go there with a bunch of friends from Bangkok and really around the world. I know people from everywhere who will participate. So
Do you have a goal time for that, or?
I don't. I think won't set that for a while now, probably until the month before. So just put in the work now, but also just chill a bit, and had a really busy last 6 months. So yeah, just enjoying.
Yeah, phases of life for everything,
Phases of
right?
life, seasons of life.
Yeah. So what would you give as kind of final thoughts for anybody who's listening? Maybe they're in the racing space, maybe not, but regardless, there's so many parallels with life, right? Culmination of everything that you've learned, what are some of the kind of key last thoughts that you want to share?
Trust the process, believe, go, lean in, but trust in the process, and just take the right next step. And have the big dreams, have the big goals, but know that you just need to take the right next step. Also, dream bigger. Dream as big as you. If you can dream it, then what's that cheesy line? If you can dream it, then you can make it happen. And I don't think we do enough of that, right? Of thinking what is my biggest dream, and is it possible? I think that would be my parting wisdom to anyone in sport or life.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Thank you for coming.
welcome.
Thank you for sharing everything. You are so inspirational in everything that you do, and the way in which you, take that first step every single day, and the consistency and the way that you show up, but doing it so humbly as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Very nice to speak with you.